Hi, I'm Terry Ammerman with the Terry Ammerman Group. And today I want to talk about a concept that I really don't think very many people talk about, and it's strategic listening. So, when I started in this business, let me give you a little bit of background. The Terry Ammerman Group is actually an offshoot of a company called Ammerman Enterprises. This company was started by my father over 50 years ago. In fact, March 18th of this year, we celebrated 50 years in business. He started the business because he was an anchorman and a reporter, and he realized that when he was interviewing people for stories, that they would be very open and forthcoming and easy to talk to when he was just talking with them. And then when he put them on camera and the lights and the camera were on, they became very uncomfortable. So he started the business in my bedroom when I went off to college, and we've been going strong ever since. I joined him in 1981, and I have been doing this my entire career. So even though I didn't have a background in journalism or reporting, I learned how to be the interviewer in a lot of the role-playing exercises that we did in our training. So I learned the concept or the art of strategic listening. So what is strategic listening? Many people think of listening as a passive activity. So you're just sitting there doing nothing, you're listening. But if you look at it as strategic listening, you're listening for things that you can connect on. You're listening for the feelings behind the words. You are not listening so that you can decide what you can say next. We, as women, talk a lot. And as I've said in my past videos, my best friend is Mina Irfan, who is an online coach. And she talks about the concept that from evolution days, we as women were, to survive, we talked a lot. When we were gathering in the fields, everybody kept talking to keep the tigers away, the animals away, the danger. So we do tend to talk a lot, but let me talk about why it's so important to listen and why it's so important to not tell someone every single thing you know about a given topic. So let's say you're in a conversation, and I want you to think about the words that you say in the course of a day. First and foremost, we're going to talk about this from our perspective, and then we're going to talk about it from the perspective of the person with whom we're conversing. So first and foremost, think about you're driving somewhere, you get in traffic, you have someone pull out in front of you and almost cause you to wreck, and it's scary. It happens in a few seconds, and then you're fine and you drive to your appointment. How many times are you going to tell that story today? Think about it and be honest. If it's 3 times, then you are wasting important emotional energy and words telling a story that comes across as a complaint, and it doesn't bring the energy to a conversation that you want to bring. So make your stories when you're talking to people positive. Talk about the good stuff. And this all falls back into, I'm a big student of manifestation. of the secret, the way that we talk, the way that we think really changes our lives. I am a big proponent of that. So do you want to spend your valuable words and the attention of someone, whether it be a close friend or a client or someone in your life, do you want to spend those valuable words and that valuable time talking about something that really doesn't change anything? And so think carefully about what you choose to share. Another way to think about strategic listening is think about, and I'm going to talk about when you first meet someone. This is a concept that's called cherry picking. So let's say, for example, you are at a networking event, which, by the way, I find those challenging. I find them hard to meet a lot of different strangers and try to get to know people. But let's say you are chatting with a stranger and you're talking about the day, how did you get here? You're talking about the weather, and the person says, yeah, it's really chilly today. When I was out walking my dog this morning, I had to wear a jacket. So you're listening to that, and your instinct might be to say, oh, I have a dog. Oh, I have a pet. I have a cat. I don't have a dog. And, or yeah, when I was driving this morning too, I realized I didn't take a jacket and I was so cold. Okay, those may be your instincts, but if we're cherry picking, we're listening to the conversation and we're listening for a question we could ask. So if the person you're talking to said, it was cold this morning when I was walking my dog, then what would be a logical next thing for you to say? Oh, what kind of dog do you have? When you say something like that, you are letting that person open up to you, especially something like that, because everyone loves talking about their pets and their kids usually. So when you ask questions that get people talking about themselves, they feel more of a connection to you, more of a bond with you. So the reason it's called cherry picking is you're listening to the entire conversation, but you're listening for ways to ask them another question about something they just said. This is the technique that I learned when I learned to play the role of a reporter in our training. And it's really interesting because I had to practice it for that specific business environment, but I've wound up using it all the time because I get such a great reaction. In fact, I had a girlfriend once say to me when we had just met and we'd gone out to dinner about 2 or 3 times, and she sat down and said, okay, we're going to talk about you. And she realized that by the time we had met for dinner 3 times, that I pretty much knew her whole life story, and she didn't know nearly as much about me. Now, I personally don't think of that as a problem. I don't need to tell my story to everyone. I already know my story. I would rather hear someone else's story. And also, I want to be careful about who I share a story with or a complaint with, because I don't trust everyone's advice. As I've built myself up and done a lot of inner work over the course of the past many years, I don't seek counsel easily. In other words, I trust my inner gut strength. I trust the God within me for a lot of answers. Now, I wasn't always that way. I could easily talk about something that just happened with my son, with my daughter, with another friend, which brings me to another point, and that is gossip. Gossip is talking about someone else in a way that you wouldn't talk about them if they were in the room. Now, there are times that you need to talk about things like this if you are growing or learning or figuring out how to solve an issue. But if you have a friendship that is connected to gossip and that your bond is about talking about other people, that's not a real friendship. That doesn't keep you at the level of integrity that you want to have as what I refer to as a high value woman. So think about those relationships and think about what you talk about when you're with those people, and do those things that you say increase the energy in the room, bring a positive vibe to the room? Could you be one of those people who talks so much that people start to pull away from you? Could you be one of those people who tells the same story, has the same complaint over and over and over again? Take an assessment and ask yourself if you're one of those people. I'm looking down at my notes. Here's another thing that you want to keep in mind when you're listening to someone. One of the most valuable things I learned from Mina in her training was, get this, okay, are you ready for this one? Just because people are complaining doesn't mean they want your advice. Let me repeat that. Just because people are complaining doesn't mean they want your advice. So if you're starting a lot of sentences with, you know what you should do is, or what I'd do if I were in your position is, let's take a step back and think of a different way to handle that. If you have someone in your life who's coming to you with a tough situation, don't hold your breath until you can speak into the situation and try to fix it for them. It's called holding the space. Just listen. Listen for the emotions behind the words. Listen for what they're really trying to tell you. If you're an online coach, you ought to be pretty good at this. And make sure that you use it in other relationships besides coaching. So if someone's coming to you and talking to you about a really tough situation and you listen to it, one of the things that really helps, and this is what you learn in coaching, is mirroring back to them what you think they just said. So, for example, you might say something like, what I think I'm hearing you say is that you're feeling vulnerable right now. And then let them answer. They might say, no, that's not really it. Or, yes, that's what I'm feeling. And then hold the space some more. Tell me more about that. So what does this do? It creates relationships that are elevated in a way that you are building, you are growing together. You are not at the complaint counter, as Mina refers to it. You're not just getting together for dinner and having a drink and complaining about everybody in your life, your boyfriend, your husband, your kids. You are looking for ways to talk about things that really matter, and you're listening to your friends in a way where they feel seen and heard. This will dramatically change your relationships